Chosen one, attention has a mass you can feel. It rests on your shoulders as if the room were placing a cloak there and waiting to see whether you will wear it like a uniform or a towel. This month, the weight increases. Women will look at you with study and with softness, with wonder and with weather from histories that do not announce themselves. The gaze is not merely sight. It is a request. It asks, can I be whole while you are powerful? Can I keep my name while you are near? Can the beauty of this moment survive tomorrow morning? Your stewardship of eyes will decide what their awe becomes, either a memory that heals or a story that requires repair. Begin by letting yourself be weighed. Notice the warmth of attention without turning it into fuel. Let your breathing teach your body that you are not a vending machine stocked with validation. Inhale as if you have nothing to prove. Exhale as if you have nothing to hide. This is the first courtesy your presence offers. You do not use the gaze to inflate yourself or to punish yourself. You allow it to pass through you toward God, the way light passes through clean glass, clarified, not captured. Your own eyes must learn a priest's discipline. There is a way of looking that blesses and a way that invoices. Blessing says, I see and I won't spend. Invoicing says, I see and I expect. The blessed gaze returns a person to herself with more agency than before. It travels with a softness that does not confuse softness with permission. It lingers like a promise that nothing will be taken while you are watching. Train this gaze by practice, not pretense. Look at faces as if they were altars, places where sacrifices have been made you know nothing about. Look at hands as if they have labored in rooms you've never entered. Look at eyes as if they are holding a constellation together by will alone. Such looking is prayer disguised as attention, and prayer does not plunder. You will feel the difference between looks that ask for recognition and looks that ask for rescue. Recognition is a shared smile across a quiet truth. Rescue is a quiet storm testing for a harbor. You are not a lighthouse if you cannot tell the difference. When recognition arrives, you honor it with presence and proportion. You do not turn it into a performance review you intend to pass with extra credit. You let the moment remain exact-sized. A nod, a conversation carried by realism rather than adrenaline, a departure while the room still feels light. When rescue arrives, compassion will tug your sleeves, but covenant will keep your feet. You can bless without becoming necessary. You can point without becoming plan. You can kneel in prayer without promising a future your strength cannot ethically underwrite. The eyes that ask to be saved will, in time, thank you for refusing to pretend you were the sea. There's a choreography for how you receive long looks in public. Smile with your whole face, not your appetite. Let warmth say hello, and let restraint carry the punctuation. Hold eye contact just long enough to dignify. Break it early enough to keep the other person's agency intact. If the moment invites conversation, let your first sentence price the room at honesty. If the moment does not, let your nod be benediction rather than bait. You are learning to convert attention into assurance, not access. Assurance says you were seen safely. Access says, you owe me now. Assurance builds cities. Access builds traps. The weight of eyes also travels through screens. The digital gaze multiplies mass while removing context. Here, your thumbs must learn the same ethics as your eyes. Do not send warmth you cannot steward offline. Do not write at a volume your body cannot live at. Do not use midnight to say what daylight will regret. The algorithm will beg you to speak in ways that turn persons into content and intimacy into metrics. Rehearse your refusals until they are muscle memory. I do not harvest vulnerability for engagement. I do not interpret curiosity as consent. I do not confuse response time with reverence. The women who meet you online are no less human. The holiness of eyes includes pixels. Your gaze will be misread, and that is part of the weight. Some will call your clarity cold because they equate warmth with porousness. Some will call your steadiness controlling because they have only known power as domination or withdrawal. Resist the urge to litigate. Let your pattern become your rebuttal. Patterns do not argue, they accrue. Over weeks, your eyes will become known as the place where stories were safe, where boundaries were honored without ceremony, where admiration was returned to the giver as ease instead of converted into debt. Reputation is a kind of gravity. Keep it holy. Learn to set your eyes down. After a day where attention has pressed against you from every angle, give the gaze back to God. In prayer, name the glances you can still feel on your skin. Bless each one like a candle you snuff without smoke. Ask mercy for the looks you mishandled. Were you invited when you should have honored? Where you looked away to avoid being kind? Where you confused being wanted with being sent? Then close your eyes and rest them. Fatigued eyes invent stories. Rested eyes tell the truth. Your eyes can also teach. Younger men will watch the way you look and copy you long before they quote you. Let them see you look at a woman and give her more dignity than you took attention. Let them see you read a room's safety before you read the room's interest. Let them see you lower your gaze when compassion requires privacy, not avoidance. Let them see you keep eye contact with the quiet person until they know silence is not a weakness here. Nothing will catechize them faster than your untheatrical reverence. Finally, remember that awe is not an argument to win, it is a trust to carry. The weight of eyes is light when you refuse to make a throne of them. If anyone tries to crown you with their gaze, return the crown unopened. Wear instead the invisible wreath of self-governance. It sits easy. It stays on when the wind rises. It reminds you that your job is not to be endlessly seen. It is to see rightly. Then step into tomorrow with that clarity, chosen one, and let your look be both lamp and limit, light enough to guide, line enough to guard, so that everyone who meets your eyes this month leaves with the same astonishment in different words. I felt safe to be whole. Chosen one, a temple is not a trick of stone. It is a choreography of care. What makes holy places holy is not only what stands there, but what is practiced there. The pace of feet, the softness of voices, the way light arrives without interrogating the room. This month, God is teaching you to inhabit spaces as if they were sanctuaries, and to treat your nearness as liturgy. You will walk into ordinary places and without fanfare, see them become rooms where people remember themselves. Women will feel it first because their bodies read weather faster than most men's words. The air shifts, the noise learns its manners, and the heart takes off its armor to see if peace is truly affordable. Do not make a show of this. Temples that advertise lose their ceiling. Let the hush arrive and keep your hands open, as if you were receiving rather than performing. Presence has architecture. At the threshold, you do not crash, you arrive. Your breathing becomes the foyer. The way you stand is the vestibule. Your first look is a bell rung gently for those who have learned to flinch. Cross that line as a priest would, with awareness that anything hurried here will cost more later. As you take your place, imagine you are lighting lamps rather than flipping switches. Light that respects eyes can be stayed under. You lower your voice until truth can fit through the door without squeezing, and you lift your attention until even the quietest person has a chair. None of this requires announcement, it requires custody of your energy. High voltage is not the point of a temple. Stewarded current is. Within the sanctuary of your presence, objects that once seemed unimportant become sacraments. A chair angled toward conversation rather than escape becomes an altar. A glass of water offered before questions begin becomes chalice and mercy at once. A phone turned face down is not technology management, it is incense. One more small rising that tells the room nothing else is being worshipped just now. The feminine reads these micro-gestures with a fluency earned through history. She senses that here, beauty is not bait, it is blessing. That here, attention is not currency, it is care. That here, laughter will not hire cruelty for a punchline. That here, curiosity is not a countdown to pressure. Awe is not fireworks in such places. It is oxygen. There is a priesthood to your attention. You do not offer sacrifices that were never yours to give. You elevate what others already carry until it can be seen with gentleness. You let silence do the long work you were tempted to fill with clever answers. You ask questions that lead people back to their own agency rather than deeper into your legend. When the room warms, you remember that sanctuaries are built to hold weather without becoming weather. You allow desire to exist as light through stained glass, colored, beautiful, contained, so that no one leaves singed. The temple of presence is not where hunger is fed recklessly. It is where hunger is named honestly until it can choose a table rather than raid a pantry. Sacred spaces are made safe by their exits as much as by their altars. You end before scarcity can write the last paragraph. You say ordinary farewells that keep affection human. This was good, let's keep it good. You do not trade benedictions for cliffhangers and call it romance. Your departures are part of your worship. They tell everyone who crosses your orbit that what was beautiful here will not be billed tomorrow. The world will call this restraint. You will know it as reverence. Temples also have thresholds inside them, the outer court of first impressions, the inner court of trust, the holy place of confession. You do not sprint them. You do not sell backstage passes disguised as compliments. You allow seasons to prove what a moment could only promise. Women will test you precisely here, often without words, to see if awe must be bought. Let your tempo answer that it does not. Refuse the shortcuts that can only produce intensity without intimacy. Intensity is easy. Intimacy is engineered by calendar, consent, and care. The temple of your presence is sustained by unseen maintenance. You sweep afterwards. You put chairs back where they belong. You repair where a hurried word nicked someone's dignity. You replace lamps in your soul, sleep, scripture, counsel, sweat, so that light stays honest and does not flicker into showmanship. You clean your altars of residue, a compliment you held too long, a gaze you should have softened sooner, a story you nearly repeated because it would have bought you admiration on credit. In the quiet, you hand these things back to God and feel the air clear again. Rituals like these are not old-fashioned. They are oxygen masks for men who are learning to host awe without hoarding it. When storms arrive, as they will, you become ballast, not Blair. Raised voices do not get to choose the key. Your calm chooses it. Accusation does not get to write the liturgy. You return the room to proportion with one sentence spoken at a human pace. You never use the pulpit of your charisma to prosecute. You never use the choir of attention to drown out a smaller voice. You practice the sacrament of specificity. Name what is true, refuse what is false, bless what is beautiful, close what is unsafe. This is how temples survive centuries, by keeping the rules simple enough to remember under thunder. If anyone attempts to canonize you for what the room felt, decline the statue. It is dangerous to become the relic in a sanctuary you were asked to steward. Say something plain. Presence is borrowed. I return it nightly. That is why it stays clean. Then keep returning it. The temple of presence is not about being admired in holy light. It is about making a place where others encounter holy light and leave knowing how to recognize it again, without you there, without fanfare, without paying a fee at the door. Chosen one. Honor is what light looks like when it remembers who it is for. Beauty can shine without honor. It simply burns people faster. Power can protect without honor. It simply does so on its own terms. Honor is the decision to let your brightness keep other people's names intact. It is the difference between admiration that consumes and admiration that consecrates. This month, your high energy will draw women into your field, the way dawn draws windows awake. Honor is how you keep that dawn from becoming a wildfire. Honor begins in the eyes long before it shows up in language. The honored gaze does not appraise, it attends. It does not scan for advantage, it witnesses. It lands lightly and leaves people larger than it found them. To honor the feminine with your eyes is to refuse to turn her into a surface for your certainty. It is to see mystery and choose reverence rather than conquest. The body keeps the score of such looks. Shoulders lower, laughter rises from a less defended place. Boundaries become declarative rather than apologetic. Awe blooms here, not because you have performed magnificently, but because you have proved safe to be magnificent near. From the eyes, honor travels to language. Praise flatters, honor names. Praise says you are stunning, honor says your presence calmed the room and sharpened its clarity. Praise rehearses adjectives, honor records evidence. You will feel the seductive efficiency of praise in your mouth. It wins smiles faster. Resist the short glory. Use words that return agency, not words that rent it. When you call forth strength, do it without conscripting someone into your story. When you thank someone for beauty, do it without making beauty the price of admission tomorrow. Your speech should leave doors open with the hinges oiled, not deadbolt emotions to keep them from running away. Honor has protocol, and protocol makes radiance useful. You ask before you move closer, even by inches. You slow the conversation when history enters it unannounced. You keep records, not of favors owed, but of boundaries spoken. You remember details that protect dignity rather than details that can be traded later for intimacy. You refuse to make secret places public currency and call it vulnerability. You make a practice of returning attention to its owner. That was your courage, not my rescue. That was your wisdom, not my guidance. That was your timing, not my permission. Women are experts at detecting the difference between a man who honors and a man who collects. Let your pattern, not your promise, make the case. The radiance of honor is generational. When you choose words and gestures that keep the feminine whole, you are teaching rooms, quietly, stubbornly, how to do the same when you are gone. Men nearby will unconsciously adjust to your standard. They will discover that jokes still work without casualties, that warmth still travels without invoices, that leadership can be luminous without being loud. You will not always be thanked. You will be imitated, which is the greater compliment and the greater responsibility. It means your maintenance is communal now. If you let your edges dull, others will borrow your dullness along with your light. Honor requires repair when you miss, and you will miss. The difference between the honored and the harmed often rides on how quickly a man can say I was wrong without making the moment a monument to his remorse. Apologize with verbs. I spoke too fast yesterday. Here is my clearer yes. I lingered too long last night. Here is my clean goodbye. I made you responsible for my loneliness. Here is my changed plan. Repair that costs you calendar, convenience, or access is the only kind that proves you meant your confession. When you pay it gladly, honor's radiance brightens, not dims. People come to trust that your remorse is not theater. It is architecture being corrected in real time. There is a way to court with honor that makes even flirtation feel like fresh air. It respects signals without making them tests. It keeps curiosity alive without cross-examining it into confession. It enjoys delight without trying to put a deed on it. It invites and then steps back far enough that the invite can be declined without penalty. It does not stage scarcity to force decisions. It does not audition for the role of destiny. Chosen ones move like this, not because they are cautious, but because they are convinced that love grows better in climates where yes and no are equally holy. Honor shines most where power could easily obscure it. When you are praised, you pivot the light onto the team that made you accurate. When you are deferred to, you use the deference to shelter someone else's process rather than speed your own. When a door opens because of your name, you hold it wide enough for another person's future to walk through beside you. You are not allergic to being seen. You simply refuse to become the seen. Women can breathe around a man who works like that. Their awe is relief in a beautiful suit. The radiance of honor is sustained by interior vows no audience will ever applaud. You will not let exhaustion rename itself permission. You will not let loneliness apply for the role of logic. You will not let nostalgia write checks on accounts you promised to keep balanced. You will not let flattery be your daily bread. These are not dower restrictions. They are dietary choices for the soul, and the soul becomes what it eats. Feed yours on truth, on Sabbath, on counsel that does not need a tip jar, on work that improves the texture of other people's days. Your glow will thicken into something weighty and kind. Honor also learns to bless and release. Not every connection is a covenant, and not every moment is a map. There will be eyes that adore you because the climate you carry is rare. Thank them with a warmth that does not recruit. Let them keep their vision of themselves without installing yourself in it. Send them forward with language that strengthens rather than slogans that create dependence. The rarest light is the kind that helps people see the road away from you without dimming as they go. At night, review your honor like a craftsman checks his tools. Where did your eyes bless? Where did your words return freedom? Where did your hands make room? Where did you choose repair over reputation? Where did you exit early enough to keep the memory clean? Where did you learn, again, that honor is not a mood but a decision renewed in small acts until the acts become a nature? Then lay your radiance down with the same hands you used to hold it during the day and say the sentence that keeps glory from becoming glare. What I kept bright was never mine. In the morning, pick it up again. Not as proof you are special, but as evidence you are willing to keep others whole while God keeps you whole. In that willingness, chosen one, awe stops being spectacle and becomes sacrament. Chosen one, glory is not a spotlight, it is a weight. You feel it this month in the way rooms lean, in the way voices soften when you arrive, in the way awe gathers like dawn along the edges of conversation. God has let your life become luminous, and the temptation is to confuse illumination with elevation, to stand taller because the light found you. Humility corrects the posture. Humility says the light is not proof you are higher. It is proof you are visible, and visibility is only useful if it becomes a road and not a throne. The awe in the eyes of women is not a cue to perform. It is a cue to govern yourself more tenderly, to turn radiance into refuge, to keep your edges warm and your center kneeling. Glory without humility bruises what it touches. It asks attendants to pay a fee in exhaustion. It takes stories hostage and bills admiration as interest. You are learning a different economy. You return attention as ease. You translate compliments into assignments. More clarity, not more charm. More truth, not more theater. More patience, not more promises. When a gaze tries to rent your presence in exchange for hurry, humility lengthens the hour instead of widening the door. You bless the moment by letting it be exactly itself. A conversation that does not need to become a contract. A glance that does not need to be rehearsed into destiny. A shared smile that does not need witnesses to be real. Humility keeps a private ledger. It remembers the hands that steadied you when your name did not yet travel. It remembers the rooms that taught you how to sit down before anyone asked you to stand up. It remembers the elders whose sentences you now say as if they were your own breath, and it credits them in secret and in public. The awe that visits you this month becomes safe when it hears you say "our more than my," when it sees you point rather than pose, when it notices that your gratitude has verbs. Gratitude that moves chairs, that ends meetings before fatigue makes good people sharp, that writes thank you notes before campaigns write headlines. This is the humility of glory, brick by brick. There is also the humility of being finite. The cloak of attention warms quickly and chills just as fast. You do not build your worth from its fabric. You let the cloak hang on the peg, while you wash the floor no one thought to admire. The men who last in bright seasons are not those who demanded to be necessary. They are those who practiced being assigned. Assigned men can hand the microphone to another without feeling their chest collapse. Assigned men can leave while tenderness is still breathing, because they know that leaving is a part of stewardship, not a failure of courage. The women who meet you will sense this and call it safety, because it frees them from the ancient bargain of paying for a man's presence with their peace. Humility turns applause into analysis that blesses rather than into arithmetic that inflates. You ask in the quiet whether the awe surrounding you produced repair or only attention. Did a boundary grow clearer rather than blurrier? Did a story gain agency rather than orbit you? Did the atmosphere become generous rather than possessive? Where the answer is no, you repent without a show. Where the answer is yes, you give thanks without a press release. Your invisible corrections become the scaffolding that keeps the public rooms from collapsing. The world will never celebrate the 100 small pivots you make in a day to keep your soul honest. But the room will feel the architecture and breathe. Humility refuses to become a museum exhibit in its own sanctuary. It does not allow nostalgia to bronze yesterday's obedience and install it in a glass case. It keeps moving at the speed of truth. It keeps learning. It keeps asking for feedback from people who owe you nothing and love you enough to be precise. It keeps declining the small exemptions power offers when it wants to make you unaccountable in exchange for being endlessly available. It keeps Sabbath at full price. It keeps the phone face down when a living person is offering you their one unrepeatable hour. Glory wants a stage. Humility wants a table. You are laying a table people will remember because the food tasted like rest. There will be moments when humility is accused of coldness. Boundaries can look like distance to those who only felt loved when they were given access without cost. Let fruit carry the verdict. Over weeks and months, the story that trails you will not be scandal or spectacle. It will be the sentence that humility has always wanted. I left more myself than I arrived. Glory that multiplies selfhood instead of celebrity is glory God can keep funding. You become a lens that clarifies rather than a mirror that demands. You become a harbor that receives and sends, rather than a port that traps ships for its skyline. Practice anonymity on purpose. Give quietly where your name cannot be leveraged. Mentor where no photos are taken. Choose the back row and listen until your silence has increased the value of what you might say later. Lift someone else's work with your whole endorsement and none of your conditions. Make a habit of losing credit. The awe that once gathered around your face will begin to settle into the culture around your life. And that is the sign you are doing this rightly. You are less the point and more the proof. The proof is simple and impossible to counterfeit. People are stronger, kinder, clearer, and freer where you have stood. At night, the humility of glory becomes prayer. You lay the day down like an instrument you refuse to sleep with in your hands. You tell God where you used radiance to avoid intimacy with Him, where you tried to be necessary because applause was loud, where you almost believed you were the light because the room was bright. He returns your scale to human and your heart to hunger that asks rather than demands. You sleep with no audience because you did not rent your worth from one. Morning arrives and humility teaches your first motion, not to gather the cloak, but to wash your feet. Dust is honest. Clean feet carry glory without dragging it. Chosen one, peace is the crown that fits you best. Not the brittle piece of performance, but the thick quiet of a river that has learned its banks. You have worn courage and restraint, presence and honor. Now God rests stillness on your head like a circle of shade. The awe that has followed you finds its home here. Women who meet you will not only admire, they will exhale. Their bodies will sense that your waters do not rush to prove themselves nor stagnate to avoid responsibility. They move with a governance that remembers rain and respects drought. Your high energy has become current, strong enough to carry, careful enough not to tear. Still waters are not passive. They are presence that has learned choreography. They receive what the day pours and they release what the day cannot keep. They irrigate fields you will never walk, and they refuse to flood houses you did not build. You become a man whose calendar is a canal system, locks and gates that steward levels with quiet clicks. When a conversation rises, you widen the channel with listening so the banks hold. When urgency tries to breach, you lower the sluice with a sentence spoken at a human tempo. When grief arrives like heavy rain, you slow the flow until sorrow can be named without drowning the room. Peace like this is not an accessory. It is infrastructure. Wear the crown by honoring rhythm. Begin in the morning where water always begins, at the spring. You return to the source without an audience. You let scripture make the stones under the surface solid again. You let breath knock silt from your lungs. You let prayer clear the inlets where resentment tried to dam kindness and where flattery tried to siphon your attention into fantasy. This is the work no one sees and everyone feels. Rivers do not advertise their springs, they simply run clear, and clarity travels miles. Your stillness teaches the world a different arithmetic of time. You prove that speed is not the only evidence of care. You prove that endings are as holy as beginnings. You prove that a late reply is kindness when an early reply would have been a lie. You prove that leaving while tenderness still has breath protects both the memory and the future. You become predictable in the best way. The meeting ends on time, even when admiration could buy you another hour. The message is answered when you can bring attention rather than adrenaline. The invitation is declined without sending scarcity to do your speaking. Predictability like this is rare enough to feel like miracle. It is, in fact, mercy. Still waters mirror the sky. Your calm will reflect constellations into rooms that forgot to look up. Without preaching, you will name things people had given up on naming. Faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, and they will see their own faces against those old stars and realize the words still fit. You do not make a spectacle of theology, you make it breathable. You tell stories that make obedience sound like freedom, because in your life it is. You say no with a soft spine, and yes with a measured joy. The awe in their eyes will not be hunger, it will be recognition, the kind that tastes like clean. Banks make rivers safe, and boundaries continue to be the beauty of your peace. You keep edges soft at the face and firm at the hinge. You take responsibility for your current. Where it runs, what it carries, what it refuses. You do not drag anyone faster than their consent. You do not promise shores you cannot provide. You do not let your waters be bottled and sold in your name. You remain a public good, generous, governed, grateful. In such a climate, attraction is allowed to be innocent again. The feminine can wade without fear of riptides disguised as romance. Hearts learn to float. The crown of still waters makes leaders of listeners. Men near you will borrow your tide table. They will learn the patience of long bends, where the river does not apologize for not being straight. They will learn to read weather without panicking the crew. They will learn to send praise downstream and keep critique constructive enough to build bridges. Women near you will remember their own springs. They will hear the clarity in your current and stop apologizing for the yes that arrived slowly and the no that arrived quickly. Children will throw pebbles into your day and laugh when the ripples come back honest.